Welcome to Beyond the Competition, the SAE University Programs Podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Mike Sorg, the podcast and media producer for the SAE University Programs. Back with you again. And I got Scott Schultz in the studio, the media maven you see on the CDS Action News, asking all those hard questions on the TikTok and the Instagrams as well. Scott, how you doing today?
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
Excellent. We got a guest today, a new guest,
A big guest.
a big guest. This is the big get for the podcast.
Yeah.
Excellent. Today we're going to be talking about NCEES, the National Council of Examiners for Engineering and Surveying. And to do that, we have Darrell Krueger, an assistant director of technical research and development with this company. We'll find out what that's all about here in just a moment. But first, how you doing, Darrell?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. Good to have you here. But first, Scott, I think you have a little bit of an icebreaker question of sorts here.
Yeah, Darrell, we like to start each interview with a segment we like to call Let's Get Weird, where we ask a question that's a little off topic, but it's a fun one. So, Darrell, if you were a color, what color would you be, and what color would be your best friend?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I would say blue. I'd be blue, and I'd be friends with yellow.
Okay. Why blue?
Blue, I think it's one of those trusting colors, or like you're an authority, or I don't know. I think I've read that once.
People gravitate towards a blue.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think blue's like everybody likes blue.
Yeah, blue's a good one.
Yeah. Why would yellow be your best friend?
Let's see. Well, I am a native of Buffalo, New York, and I am a hockey fan. Therefore, Buffalo Sabres, blue and yellow, blue and gold.
Okay, I like it.
Excellent. Well, let's get into it. First, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your educational background here.
Yeah. So I guess in short, I would consider myself the inquisitive, naturally skeptical, creative, visual type engineer. I love to take things apart, draw, experiment, design and build things. I was a product of the public school system. My parents, my mom worked for the phone company, so always some interesting, stuff with electronics and communications. My dad, he was a scientist specifically in the veterinary field, but he also fixed clocks as a hobby, so that was kind of always in the background. Now you don't hear of anybody fixing clocks. I had an uncle who was an electrical engineer, but he went straight into the Air Force in Vietnam, so he flew, and he was always kind of the technology-forward family member, so we got exposed to that. So, of course, parents loved to encourage my brother and I to read, so that was good. But then our family moved to Atlanta with my mom's job, and we got closer to my uncle. I finished high school in Atlanta and then went on to Auburn University. Not exactly the first choice for somebody from Western New York. I had really no idea any of the colleges in the Southeast. I had planned to go to Georgia Tech, but I was not up to snuff for their entrance requirements. But I figured I'd go to Auburn for a few years and transfer back in and get that Hope Scholarship so I didn't have to pay so much for school. But I fell in love with Auburn within, a few weeks of being there. And I had a class, it was an engineering orientation class that every engineering discipline presented each week. It was a 1-hour class. And we got to mechanical engineering. I had signed up as civil. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I met with Jackie Cole and met her in Wilmore Labs. She was a student advisor for that class. And we talked about mechanical engineering. And then she took me into this lab where students were building race cars. My jaw hit the floor. I asked, what is this? This is awesome. So I went to the team meeting, joined the Baja team, and I think within a few days changed my major over to mechanical. So I think that was a key moment really turning the corner into a focused education for mechanical engineering.
You said you didn't know much about Auburn before you went there. Is there a reason you chose Auburn besides not getting into Georgia Tech?
Auburn was actually the first school that accepted me, and I had put that on the back burner and said, okay, well, we'll keep that in the back pocket just in case. And so I went to other schools, toured around. I had no SEC affiliation. College football was just not really that big in Western New York, so I picked Auburn because they picked me first.
Well, they'd made the right choice, right?
I think so, yeah. It was a great experience.
As an alumni of the Baja SAE team at Auburn, what was your experience like there as a student team member?
I mean, nothing short of outstanding, honestly. I would say Baja is what kept me in engineering. Baja is what kept me in engineering. I was fortunate to join the team as a freshman. Not particularly useful as a freshman, but you learn the people, you learn how things work. And eventually I got to learn machining, welding, fabrication through the older team members. Eventually became a leader of a design area, eventually became team leader for a couple of years, and just learned so much. I spent 5 years in undergrad, and I had a particularly tough sophomore year. I failed a calculus class, and I remember going in to see a advisor, and she said, well, maybe you're just not cut out for engineering. And that ticked me off. What I started to see was a connection in my classes to anything related to the Baja car. So instead of seeing useless homework problems, or at least what I thought were useless homework problems, I was able to go through the lessons and say, that applies to this part of the car, that applies to that part of the car. So I put my personal interest into engineering rather than just turning the crank and doing the homework problems.
Smart.
That makes such a big difference. I know in my own, obviously I'm media, but it was like you had to apply what was in front of you, right? Like, being an ambiguous concept, it didn't help anything, right?
Yeah, if you can see the end destination somehow, even if it's a vision, not necessarily something set in stone, but a nice vision, that just goes miles and miles for you.
First of all, amazing path that you're going on here through your educational journey. But of course, you've landed where you are today. How would you describe your current career, who you're with, and what are your daily responsibilities? What would you say you do here?
Yeah, that is a loaded question. So
we do the tough ones on this show.
Yeah, as I was finishing up school, so I ended up going to undergrad, and then straight into graduate school. I got an offer, talked to some friends, some people that had graduated. They said, just, you're in the school mode, keep going. And so I stuck with that. So I stuck around another 2 years, got my master's, and then that was 2007. I was all set up for the automotive world. I had my certificate in automotive engineering, and that was not the time for a young engineer to get into the automotive industry. So I was complaining to a friend of mine about not getting a call back from company A, not getting a good interview with company B, and just kind of wash, rinse, repeat on that cycle. So he suggested I call one of his dad's old colleagues. This colleague and my friend's dad worked together at Southern Railway. His colleague had run this engineering consulting company in Atlanta specifically for railroads. I thought, okay, well, we'll give it a shot. I like trains, planes, automobiles, anything that moves under its own power. So why not? It's a job and it sounds interesting. It's the best opportunity. So I interviewed, got the job, and it was great. I was able to kind of have this new, fresh, exciting field. So I was learning a lot there, catching up on that. But I was also able to bring in some of my experience with Baja and automotive into our company. And so that ended up being being really good. And so I worked there for 5 years as a consultant to railroads, big railroads, small railroads, transit agencies, you name it. And so what we did specifically was train operations studies. So how big do you build the train? How many locomotives do you put on it? How do you drive it over this particular territory? And then if you drive it that way, what forces happen between each car? What forces get applied to the track? And how does that kind of trickle down to derailments or damage to customers' freight? So you pair that with a lot of instrumentation and testing, and you put all that together and you can solve problems for railroads on how they can better serve their customers. So I did that for 5 years and then was hired by BNSF Railway in the Technical Research and Development Department, basically doing the same thing I had done as a consultant. Now I only had one customer.
Before we move on, you kind of touched on how being on the Baja team helped you in your career. Can you dive in a little more on your experience on Baja and how it helped you with trains and the freight and all that good stuff?
I remember starting to use a software package. Again, we were talking about silly acronyms before the show, and this software it was called Vampire, and I still don't think I know the whole acronym, but it was a vehicle dynamics simulation package. So for those of you in the automotive world, it's similar to Atoms. It's a dynamic simulation package. So when I was in grad school, I had studied off-road tires. I had designed and built a test rig to get tire performance curves for ATV tires. So that had a lot of instrumentation, load cells, that kind of stuff, and then all the MATLAB and data processing afterwards. But how the tire and the soil interacted had a very similar mathematical relationship to how the railroad wheel interacted with the railroad rail. You look at the two plots, their respective plots, and they're just the same shape. They're the same behavior. It's a pretty interesting thing. So that tire experience helped me understand how the wheel meets the rail.
Mike, let me tell you about the SAE Sustainable Mobility Career Center. It's the premier career portal for sustainable mobility. Can you believe that?
I can't believe that. And in addition to having access to hundreds of job postings, you can also browse monthly articles and sign up for job alerts.
Well, that's almost too good to be true. From what I hear, it's the best place to find what's next for you after college. Mike, where could they sign up?
You can sign up at sustainablecareers.sae.org or just click on the link in the description of this episode. Obviously, you had some experience with the Baja competition here. What motivated you to come back and become a volunteer for it? And what's that experience been like for you since?
Frustration and anger is what drove me to volunteer for Baja.
Oh, I was worried that was going to be the experience note there.
Yeah. So for probably 2/3 of the time I was competing, technical inspection at the Baja competition was left to the individual organizers. So if there were 3 competitions in a given year, there were effectively 3 interpretations of the rule book. So the people inspecting your car were not the same from event to event to event. So a lot of teams were spending unnecessary amounts of effort and time and stress reconfiguring their car at each event. So we didn't have any rules questions. I think you could mail somebody, snail mail, to the rules committee, but good luck getting a response in a few months. So what happened in 2004, I believe, that some like-minded students who had already graduated, Jason Rounds and Adam Huseman, they worked with SAE to create a national technical inspector body. And so those initial trials I thought were great. Yeah, there were some hiccups, but I mean you got to build one to know how to build one, right? You got to go through that initial experience. So having seen the benefits of that upon graduation, I wanted to be part of that. So they made you take a couple years off just to make sure you're disassociated from your team as best you can. And in those interim years, I helped at Auburn University to design and build a endurance course, and we set up a competition. So we hosted for I think 4 or 5 times over the course of I think 10 years. But yeah, anger and frustration. So I wanted to make things better for the students coming in and not have them have to go through what I experienced.
It's good motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said the roles questions, you had to mail them in. Are you just a little bit jealous that they can just submit them online now and get an answer sort of quickly?
Yeah, a little bit. So I am one of the rules representatives, so I answer a lot of the questions online. And yeah, I think about that from time to time. It's nice that you can kind of have this back and forth conversation. So we get a lot of traffic on there, so I don't know that all the students fully understand how much we process. So it takes a while, and there's a lot of background conversation. Somebody may have expertise in some area. For example, one of our guys is really good with hydraulics. So if we have hydraulic questions, we got to rope him in, and we talk about what we think would be the safest, most practical solution. So it takes a little bit of time to turn that around just because of the background conversations.
Yeah, and the teams don't know there's other teams asking questions. It's all...
Well, yeah, I think we're all like that, especially when it comes to customer service. You get mad when you're the ninth in the queue for your phone help, but
yeah.
So obviously you have a lot of experience on both sides of the rules here. What would you like to tell current and future Baja competition participants that you wish you were told back in the day when you were a team member putting that car together?
I would have 3 things that I would want to tell myself. 1, how to be a better communicator. Engineers are not known for being the most articulate people on the planet. I remember hearing a joke a long time ago. How do you tell an extroverted engineer?
How?
He stares at your shoes. Yeah. So, but this is something that you can't just become a good communicator and be done with it. Everybody comes up, they have different experiences, they experience the world in different ways. And so just becoming a lifelong learner when it comes to communication. I can think of several times when I was on the team where I got into a fight with somebody or an argument over something stupid. And when you look back, we just couldn't communicate. The good thing, though, is that I'm friends with these folks still to this day. I speak with them probably every day, every other day in a group chat. 1, be a better communicator. Learn how to be a better communicator. 2, I would say understand the money side of engineering. We can have all these grand plans and this awesome technical presentation, but if you can't sell the people with the money side, your project's not going anywhere. So understanding return on investment, getting a good understanding of what you're really putting into and what you're getting out of it is important. And I think students can handle that in small chunks from the donations they receive, the grants they get, and also selling the school on what they're going to get for their investment. So I think understanding the money side of engineering is number 2 thing I would have wanted to know more. And the third thing is how to organize all of your CAD files. My goodness, our network drive for the Baja Car CAD files was the biggest mess. It looked like all the Legos just thrown out on the floor. Somebody would name a file something else, and then it's like, who has the suspension arm? All right, okay, yeah, it's done. All right, well, which file is it? It's suspension arm 5A for real this time, Rev B. We're all guilty of that, right?
Yeah.
We're all guilty of that. So one thing I've experienced here at work is we've gone through putting all of our CAD stuff into PDM, so versioning, all the documentation. So I think if students have a good way to organize their CAD files, you would save a lot of time. So that's my number 3.
Good three. Before we move on away from the Baja side and into the NCEES side, I'd like to know how your team did back in the day when you were competing.
I would say Auburn was a kind of scrappy, middle of the road team. And then we got a lot of really good people together and we became a top 10 team. We won at least one endurance race while I was competing. And I think 1 or 2 years later, after I had left, the team ended up winning a competition outright. So I think we really pushed Auburn to a new level in my time there.
Were you ever the driver?
Yeah, I was one of the endurance drivers for several years.
Are you the one who won the endurance race?
Yes, I was one of the drivers during that race.
Hey, congratulations.
Thanks.
We're going to move into the NCEES side. You took the Principles and Practice Engineering exam from them. How was that experience and what made you decide to take it?
My boss, my boss's boss, he was a PE and he had always encouraged people to look into getting a PE. And in my previous job, that was something that was good. It was seen as a benefit because in my previous job, we had done expert witness type stuff on legal cases. And so having a PE was a nice thing for your credibility.
Real quick, what is a PE?
Professional engineer.
Okay. And that's what this test turns you into?
Yes, you have to take this exam and then your state, I think, recognizes that you've completed the test, but your state board of engineers is who gives you the PE.
Okay.
The NCEES test is the first step, and the second step is getting your state board to license you.
Sorry, I cut you off. I forget where you were going, but your boss made you or wanted you to take that for the legal stuff, right?
When I was at the consulting firm, yeah, the legal stuff was the big driver of it. And then when I came to BNSF, we have a interesting position within the company where we interface with all the other departments, but we also interface with our suppliers and we also interface with our regulators. And so having that PE kind of helps you, again, have that credibility with all these people that are party to transactions and contracts and things like that. So one of the things we do at the lab is test new material. So let's say there's a contract that's written that you're going to provide this product to the railroad. Here's all the specs it needs to meet. We will be some of the people testing that to make sure we're getting what we paid for. Our general director was a PE. He encouraged anybody that was interested in it to go take the exam. So several of us here have done that since then.
So, I mean, you talked about a little bit of, kind of the benefits and this kind of, it sounds like it's a validation of your skill sets in the career. Are there any other additional ways that it helps your career when you complete these exams?
So for some people, you actually get into stamping your seal of approval on a lot of plans. So, engineers are kind of the gateway between science and the public. So we as PEs have to keep in mind the safety and well-being of the general public. So say you're designing a lifting mechanism that is going to hoist a load, and we want to make sure that that's not going to fall apart and cause harm. So there's a lot of ethics that go into that. They're pushed in the test, and they just want to make sure that you've got these principles down pat. I remember studying for the test, and gosh, I had to really dig and relearn some of these things.
And would you recommend taking this test to other engineers who are graduating, will be graduating, already graduated?
Yeah, I think so. There's a test before the fundamentals of engineering, and that is usually done when you're in school or right after school. I'd encourage anybody to take the FE, 100%. I would encourage anybody to take the principles and practice exam. Now, you have to become a PE, you have to work under a PE, you have to demonstrate your knowledge and have people sign off on you, endorse you. But the principles and practice exam is a great way to kind of close the gap and say, yeah, okay, I get this material. I had a good education. I can recall this. I think it's just a good punctuation at the end of your education.
So, obviously, the students that are listening to this podcast are going to be at various stages of their educational journey themselves. So, this sounds like more of a later on professional thing after they've graduated. At what point should they be considering these exams? Is there a look to, like, should they be looking at some of these exams as they're going through school, or is this a kind of preparing for it along with their graduation?
Yeah. When I was in school, we had the MEC 2000 test and the MEC 3000 test, and that was a form of the fundamentals of engineering. It was kind of a checkpoint at various stages of your education. So I took the FE, the fundamentals, not long after I graduated. And I think it's important to take that exam when you're relatively fresh out of school. And that is what opens the door. That is the prerequisite for the principles and practice exam. And what a lot of people will do is, if they're working under a PE, they will have taken their FE exam and they're accruing I'm not exactly sure if you have to have any development hours as a FE. I'd have to remember that. Surely, when you're a PE, you have yearly development hours that you are required to have, take, and catalog. But I think during that time between the FE and the principles and practice exam, that's when you're really learning kind of what you want to do when you grow up. And so if you want to continue down the path as a PE, you will have made those relationships. You will have gotten those endorsements, and you can take that if it's necessary or beneficial for your career. But I think just overall, it's great to put that punctuation at the end of your engineering education.
This all sounds great. Do you have any tips for people that are going into their exams about the process or the preparation for any of these?
Oh yeah, it's funny. I brought a stack of my flashcards in here. I had a unique experience when I took the test. One, it was in the middle of the pandemic, and the test was delayed for several months. So you know how you get ready, and you want to put everything down on paper, and then nothing. So I had to be very conscious about continuing to study. I still had the test coming up. I just had, I think, an extra 3 months or so in between when I was supposed to take it and when I actually took it. And the exam was the first exam for mechanicals administered by computer. And so all of the prep classes I took were specifically suited for the written exam when you were able to bring in all your materials. So there was a disconnect there, and you didn't really know what to expect on the online test. There was a few PDFs out there that gave you an idea, but they weren't very complete. I would say make you a stack of flashcards, put the formula on the front, explain it on the back, but come up with some ridiculous mnemonic or ridiculous saying that makes you laugh. It's going to stick a lot better. If you saw what I had written on my cards, you would wonder what planet I was from. But if it makes you laugh, it's going to stick. So do that with your flashcards.
Let's say, Scott was saying, can we hear some of those? Are they safe for podcast?
Probably not, but this is.
Oh wow!
It's about a 2-inch stack of cards just on top of themselves. So pop culture stuff, SNL stuff, comedian stuff that I like. So if it helps you remember and it makes you laugh, it's gonna stick.
I like. Who's your favorite comedian?
Oh wow, that's a good one. My brother is really into comedians, and he's been great about getting my wife and I tickets to see different comedians. I think my favorite I've seen was Kevin Nealon. He was great.
Oh, okay. Anything you want to plug, Darrell? Any social media, new project you're working on?
Well, I'm working on all kinds of stuff. That's my kryptonite. I want to work on everything that's cool, and I run out of time and space. So, no, I would actually plug 2 books that were just outstanding engineering stories. One is called The Idea Factory, and I think it's by John Gertner, and it is the history of the Bell Labs in New Jersey as told through some of their most famous engineers and scientists. And the second book is called Sidewinder. It's by Ron Westrom, and it's the story of the development of the Sidewinder missile. It's absolutely entertaining for an engineer, just because of all the ups and downs. It's a very much a David and Goliath story, and it emphasizes the saving time, not necessarily money. It emphasizes having a good working relationship with your technician. So the line between a technician and an engineer should be a blurry one. But I'll save that for the rest of the book if people want to get it.
Well, yeah, we'll be sure to check it out. And I'm sure our listeners
absolutely. I believe I've heard a bit about that Idea Factory one with Bell Labs. And there's a lot of stuff we use today that came out of Bell Labs, is my understanding.
100%. It's amazing.
So definitely check that out if you don't know it. It's a big piece of engineering day to day that again what we have here. Hey, thank you so much. This has been a great chat with you. And of course, this is an audio podcast, but we got to see that giant stack of flashcards, so I really appreciate that. I'm hoping you can tell us some of the NSFW ones after the recording here.
All right. Thanks. I appreciate you all having me on. Appreciate it.
Of course, if you're not already, subscribe to the podcast, follow the YouTube, follow the TikTok, the Instagrams for the SAE University Programs, so you can see Scott's lovely face here, not just on this audio podcast. And, of course, get a lot of information about what is going on around all the programs and competitions that you can participate in, and also all the great sponsors and organizers and everything else we're talking to throughout the year. Year-round, there's a lot of content happening there. And, of course, CDS Action News, starring Scott and Mike. And you can see what's going on with, the latest and greatest in SAE University Programs.
And be sure to check out NCEES, NCEES.org to learn more about these exams and how to become a PE, professional engineer.
That's right. That is NCEES.org. Check them out. Get your career going. And
if you're a Baja team member, be sure to say hi to Darrell at the events.
Guys, thank you so much. We'll see you guys next time on the next episode, and stay safe out there. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Competition, the SAE University Programs Podcast. Show notes for this episode can be found at beyondthecompetition.fireside.fm. Remember, stay tuned for updates on your competition's newsfeed or app, and follow SAE_University Programs on TikTok and Instagram. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next episode. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Competition, the SAE University Programs Podcast.